Welcome to the Minute of Terror channel. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment where you are watching this video from.
Hello, Luke. I want to share my story with you. My name is John Mendez, and I'm a cowboy on a remote ranch in Texas Hill Country. What I'm about to tell you happened many years ago, but I still get chills every time I think about it. It's a story that changed my life, and I carry it like a weight that never lifts. I'll divide it into 4 parts so you can understand how everything happened. It was a moonless night, and I was making my rounds on Mr. Antonio's ranch, a place so isolated that the nearest town, Bandera, was hours away on horseback. The ranch was surrounded by tall brush and twisted trees, with a silence that felt alive, as if the land itself was breathing. I was riding my horse, Thunder, a strong animal, but that night he was restless, snorting and pawing at the ground. My lantern cut through the darkness, lighting the dirt road that led to the corral, near an old dry well, and used for decades. Thunder suddenly froze. He wouldn't move, as if something held him back, and no light whip made him budge. A chill ran down my spine, but I thought it was just the fatigue of the night. I dismounted, gripping the reins tightly, and began walking toward the well to see what was wrong. The air felt heavier there, and the silence was broken by a strange sound, like water gurgling up from the bottom of the well. That was impossible, because that well had been dry since before I was born. I stood frozen, trying to understand, when I heard a soft voice, almost a whisper, calling, "John, John." It was a woman's voice, gentle, but with something in it that made my heart race. I looked around, but there was no one. Just the darkness, the well, and Thunder trembling behind me. I stepped closer to the well, holding the lantern with a shaking hand. The gurgling grew louder, as if water was rising. I pointed the light inside, expecting to see the dry bottom, but what I saw turned my blood cold. Dark water, almost black, was slowly rising, reflecting the lantern's glow like a shattered mirror. And then, within the water, I saw a face. A woman with long hair and sunken eyes, so white they seemed to glow. She stared at me, her face both sorrowful and terrifying. The voice came again, clearer. "John, come with me." My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. Thunder neighed loudly, yanking at the reins, snapping me back to reality. I stepped back, but felt something cold, like a hand, grip my arm, pulling me toward the well. My mind panicked, and I began praying the Lord's Prayer, the words spilling out without thought. The woman's voice rose, almost a scream, but I kept praying, stumbling backward until I mounted Thunder. He bolted as if fleeing death itself, and I didn't stop until we reached the corral, far from the well. The next day, I returned to the well in daylight, with the foreman, Manuel. There was no water, no sign of what I'd seen. The well was dry, as always. Manuel laughed, saying I must have drunk too much whiskey, but I knew what I had seen. I spoke with Mrs. Lucy, the ranch cook, who knew every story about the land. She told me about Maria, a young woman who had lived there many years before. Maria was married to a cruel rancher named Raymond, who abused her. One night, after a fight, he threw her into the well, where she drowned. The crime was covered up, and Raymond died years later, but people say Maria's spirit never left. She appeared to anyone passing the well at night, calling, as if begging for company in her loneliness. Mrs. Lucy said my prayers saved me, because Maria tried to drag men into the depths, maybe out of vengeance, maybe out of despair. I couldn't sleep for days, seeing her face in my dreams. I never again made rounds alone at night, and I avoided that well as if it were cursed. Years went by, but Maria's story stayed with me. The ranch changed owners, and the well was sealed with concrete, but that didn't erase what I had lived. I moved to another ranch, closer to Bandera, trying to leave the past behind. But sometimes on quiet nights, I still hear a whisper calling my name, as if Maria is still there, waiting. I've told this story to only a few, and now I share it with you, Luke, because I feel it needs to be heard. That dry well held more than water. It held sorrow, and I learned that some places never forget what happened in them. It was a hot afternoon in Laredo, Texas. The sun burned down hard, scorching the dry earth of the Almeida Ranch. Golden fields stretched as far as the eye could see, tall grass swaying in the wind. Lucas, a 5-year-old boy, played in the dusty yard. He chased colorful butterflies, laughing loudly, his curly hair glinting in the sun. His laughter filled the air with joy. Clara, his mother, was in the kitchen, kneading dough for cornbread. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the smoke of the wood-burning stove. Jose, his father, tended to the cattle in the corral, calmly checking the herd. Matthew, the 14-year-old brother, chopped wood with an old axe, the sound echoing steadily. It was an ordinary day, like many others on the ranch. Then Clara noticed something strange. Lucas's laughter stopped. She dropped the dough, wiped her hands on her apron, and ran outside. "Lucas, where are you?" she called. No answer. The yard was empty, except for the rope's swing still swaying, as if he had just been there. Jose and Matthew stopped what they were doing and joined the search. They combed the corral, the chicken coop, the garden, and even the creek at the back of the ranch. Nothing. Lucas had vanished into thin air. Word spread quickly. Neighbors, sun-worn and tired, joined in. Men, women, and children called his name, beat through the brush, dragged the creek with nets. For 3 days they searched, but found no trace. Clara wept endlessly. Jose barely spoke, and Matthew blamed himself for not watching his brother. The elders in town began whispering old legends. They spoke of a mysterious woman in the woods, a figure that appeared to children alone. Some said she was a lost spirit. Others said she was something worse, something not of the living. Clara refused to listen. She only wanted her son back. Jose, who had never believed in ghost stories, began to doubt himself. With each passing day, the weight on their hearts grew heavier. The ranch, once full of life, grew silent, as if even the birds understood the tragedy. On the 4th day, everything changed. Clara, exhausted from crying, heard a soft noise in the yard. She rushed outside and saw Lucas sitting on the ground, right where he had been playing before he vanished. But he was not the same. His once bright eyes were dull, clouded over. His skin, once sun-kissed, was pale, almost gray. He sat quietly, staring at the horizon. Clara fell to her knees, clutching him. "My God, Lucas, where have you been?" She sobbed. His body was cold, as if he had spent the night in the open. When he spoke, his voice was deep, almost adult, nothing like that of a 5-year-old boy. "The Lady of the Woods took me," he said flatly. "She showed me a place where there is no joy, no sorrow, only emptiness. I came back to say goodbye." Jose ran into the yard, hearing his son's words. He grabbed Lucas by the shoulders. "What lady? Where were you? Tell me." But Lucas only shook his head, unwilling or unable to say more. He raised his hand toward the dense line of trees beyond the fields. "She's there waiting. She doesn't want me to stay." His words chilled them to the bone. Clara carried him inside, wrapping him in blankets, trying to warm him, but the cold seemed to come from within. Matthew, silent, remembered the old stories their grandparents told, stories about the woods and things beyond explanation. They called Mrs. Margaret the village healer. She was a small woman with sharp eyes, a wooden rosary, and a pouch of herbs. She sat by Lucas and prayed. Waving sage smoke through the room. "This boy's spirit is trapped," she said after a long silence. "Something has marked him. Only a greater power can help." She prayed for hours, but Lucas did not respond. He kept staring at the window, as if listening to something no one else could hear. Clara held his hand, begging him to stay. Jose stood by the door, his chest tight. He had never believed in spirits, but his son's voice shook his certainty. That night, Clara stayed at his side, refusing to sleep. She held his fragile hand. "Stay with me, my love," she begged. Lucas looked at her with tenderness and profound sorrow. "I can't, Mom. She's calling me. If I don't go, she'll come for me." The words cut her like a knife. At sunrise, Clara woke with a start. The bed was empty. She rushed outside, screaming his name. Lucas stood at the edge of the woods, glowing in the morning light, his body almost transparent. "Lucas!" she cried, running toward him. But before she reached him, he turned, gave her a weak smile, and ran into the woods. With each step, his form dissolved until nothing was left. They searched again, more desperately than before. Neighbors, police, even seasoned trackers combed the woods. No sign of Lucas. The family broke apart. Time passed. They left the ranch behind. Jose sold it cheap just to get away. Matthew grew withdrawn, carrying guilt. Clara was never the same again. Manuel Costa, Lucas's uncle, tells this story with a heavy voice. He wasn't there that day, but he bears the weight of not helping. Years later, he swore that while passing the abandoned ranch, he heard a child's laugh in the wind. Looking toward the woods, he saw a small shadow with dull eyes staring back. Terrified, he prayed and never returned. The ranch remained empty. Locals in Laredo avoid the place at night. They say that on dark nights, you can hear Clara's cries or Lucas's laughter. The story became legend. Parents warn their children, "Don't go into the woods alone, or the lady will take you." Hello, Luke. My name is Michael Sanders, and I live in a modest house near Laredo, Texas. What I'm about to tell you happened years ago, when I gave shelter to a mysterious woman. She changed the way I see the world, and the experience still echoes in me like a warning. I'll divide the story into 4 parts so you can understand what I lived through. It was 1998, and I lived alone in a small adobe house outside of Laredo. My life was simple, working the fields and helping neighbors whenever they needed. One day, a woman knocked on my door. She introduced herself as Mrs. Isabel, a thin figure with sunken eyes and streaks of gray in her hair, though she seemed strangely young. She said she had come from far away, running from troubles, and needed a place to stay for a few days. I felt pity for her and fixed up a small room out back. Isabel was polite but strange. During the day, she spoke little and often stared off at nothing, as if listening to voices. At night, I saw her wandering the yard, murmuring words I couldn't understand. I thought it was some kind of prayer and didn't pay much attention. But over time, unsettling things began to happen. The hens stopped laying eggs, the garden wilted for no reason, and I felt a constant fatigue I couldn't explain, as if something was draining the life out of me. One night, I woke to the sound of soft music, like a mournful chant, coming from the yard. Looking out the window, I saw Isabel dancing under the moonlight, moving in circles with a grace that didn't seem her own. Around her, dark shadows spun like faceless figures, keeping rhythm with her steps. I froze, shivering with a cold that didn't come from the air. What I saw that night haunted me. I decided to keep a closer eye on her. By day, she seemed normal, but at night the dances continued. The shadows grew sharper, like silhouettes of people, and I swear I heard voices crying, begging to be set free. My home, once my refuge, now felt heavy, as if carrying grief that wasn't mine. I confided in Mrs. Joanne, a neighbor who understood spiritual matters. When she came over and saw Isabel, she crossed herself and whispered, "That woman is bound to something not of this world." She explained that some people perform rituals to hold on to the dead, trapping their souls out of fear or loneliness. I decided to confront Isabel. One night, when she began dancing, I went into the yard with a flashlight and called her name. She stopped, her eyes glowing as if she were in a trance. "What are you doing, Isabel?" I asked, my voice shaking. She looked at me, and for a brief moment I saw guilt on her face. "They're my family," she said. "I can't let them go." The shadows pressed closer, and I felt a crushing weight in my chest, as if something wanted to pull me in. I ran back inside, locked the door, and prayed until sunrise. The next day, I went to see Father Francis from the small church in town. I told him everything, and he listened with grave concern. "This is serious, Michael," he said. "If she made a pact to hold those souls, it must be broken, or it will destroy her, and you along with her." That afternoon, Father Francis came to my home. Isabel, pale and worn out, finally confessed. Years before, she had lost her husband and 2 children in an accident. Desperate, she sought out a healer who taught her a ritual to keep their spirits near. Since then, she had been dancing every night, giving her own strength to bind them. But it was killing her slowly, and now it was poisoning my house as well. Father Francis proposed a ritual of release. That night, by candlelight, he prayed solemn masses and words of deliverance. Isabel trembled, crying and begging for forgiveness. The shadows reappeared, but this time began to transform into gentle lights, like fireflies. I saw 3 glowing figures, a man and 2 children, who smiled at Isabel before rising into the sky. When it was over, Isabel collapsed to her knees, exhausted but freed. The house felt light again. After that, Isabel changed. She asked my forgiveness and revealed her real name was Teresa Lane. She chose to remain in Laredo, working as a seamstress, slowly rebuilding her life. The garden grew again, the hens laid eggs, and the weight on my chest vanished. But I never forgot those nights. Teresa now attends Mass every Sunday, and sometimes she visits me with a cake or a kind smile. She says she has learned to let go, that love cannot imprison those who have already left. I, too, learned something. There are forces we don't understand, and clinging to what no longer belongs to us only brings sorrow. My house became my home again, but I carry this story as a reminder of what I witnessed and of what I never wish to see again, Luke.